Hello and welcome to the Hard Sell, where the Christmas stick in the Christmas bucket rattles Christmas back. And welcome to a special festive edition of Happiness in Magazines. What could we possibly be looking at for a Christmassy version of that? What else? I've made a running gag against my better nature of the fact that I keep describing these over the past 15 years or so as legendary. Mainly because it's obnoxious as all hell to call yourself that. A level of self-satisfaction that only serves to alienate the reader. But they don't do it for no reason. It's true. It is a legend. A staple of Christmas since at least the late 60s, when it first went double-sized. But probably earlier than that, all the way back to the first one in 1923, when we all sat around the wireless in evening wear. To this day, it's an essential part of the festive season, although if it keeps going up in price, it's not going to last much longer. This episode has to be about one of these. It's just a given. This is the Christmas magazine. So what year? Well, I've chosen at semi-random 1972. Exactly 50 years ago, I'm afraid, so long that the counties listed on the cover no longer exist. This is the one with the circus-themed cover starring Morecambe and Wise, with Lulu, Bruce Forsyth and a dead lion. Circuses had a pretty strong Christmas association at the time, largely thanks to Billy Smart, who presumably provided the cat. Doesn't look very happy to have been stuffed. So I suppose you wouldn't, would you? Anyway, what's advertised between the previews and listings? Two things for the most part. Booze and holidays. Especially booze. Right from the inside front cover. A take on the supposedly beloved but in reality at best tolerated holiday classic, The 12 Days of Christmas, with just about all the salient points replaced with a reference to Hague Scotch, or simply with the word Hague itself. Hague, Hague, Hague. 12 Hagues pouring. 10 Hagues a mixing. 2 small Hagues. 5 gold Hagues. Until the word is so embedded in your consciousness it replaces all other nouns. Who knows, if Alexander Haig had tried this approach in 1988, he might have become president. It's hard not to read this as a cry for help from some poor alcoholic. My life is ruled by whiskey. I no longer know the words for anything else. I called my own daughter single grain yesterday. Please help me back into the human race. Please, sir. Don't be vague. But that's just the start of quite an alcohol-sodden crawl, really. Next up is much more upbeat. Baby Sham.
Hey, I'd love a baby sham.
Yeah, baby.
80s desperation. Baby Sham was first invented in the 40s, possibly as a result of rationing. Its stupid name refers to the fact that it was intended, or at least marketed, as a sort of lightweight champagne for beginners. And by beginners, I mean women. It was the first alcoholic drink explicitly aimed at the ladies. Those delicate flowers who couldn't possibly handle even standard lagers, let alone the likes of Hague. The patriarchy. No one said we were smart. Anyway, Baby Sham was very popular and even iconic for a while until suddenly it wasn't. More or less at the same time that everyone realised that women can drink what the hell they like and don't have to restrict themselves to some syrupy pear cider just to fit some confused societal expectations. Still around though, and even still sporting the legally distinct from Bambi mascot. It's not a deer, it's a chamois. Get it? Sham. Moving on. Just 2 pages later, more drink. More girly drink as well. Well, at least that's the impression that I get, with the snorkel pucker glam lady and the snowman and all. Plus, Pimm's. Not exactly a hardcore rot gut, like Babysham, often aimed at women down the years. Although its main image, as far as I can tell, is more class-based than gender-based, i.e. it's considered a posh twat's drink, a tattler reader's drink. That's pretty much their main image, to the extent that they actually tried to undercut it a few years back with Xander Armstrong.
Hang on! 4 of you, 1 of me, I make that Pimm's a clock, don't you? Wowza! Somebody's trust fund matured, you boys are loaded!
Which actually had the opposite effect of reinforcing the drink's chinless image. So they dropped him. 2 pages later, there's a cognac. I hope you're not drinking your way through these. It will be a highly unpleasant experience and you will almost certainly die. Or best be violently ill. While Haig went for whimsy with a disturbing subtext, and the 2 lady drinks went with bright colours and wide lipsticked smiles, cognac is supposed to be classy, so we've got a softly lit image of sophisticated intimacy. 2 beautiful and probably very rich people enjoying a cognac before, I expect, having sex under a mirrored ceiling. Hopefully. I can't say as I trust the expression on James Garner here's face. This might actually be the start of a horror movie. Something by Paul Verhoeven, anyway. Let's move on quickly and indeed bring all this drinking fun to a screeching halt. Drinking and driving is a problem all year round, but the 2 flashpoints are the height of summer, as long as there isn't a plague, and Christmas. So piffs and posters warning you about it are practically a Christmas tradition. In 1972, drink driving wasn't a mini-industry in its own right, but there was still campaigns. And that year they were fronted by the great Stratford Johns.
Ever seen a driver blow in the bag? It's getting to be a far more familiar sight than it used to be.
One of TV's most familiar faces at the time, playing DCS Charlie Barlow in 4 programmes and counting, giving him an inherent air of jowly authority.
Last year, there were nearly 40,000 convictions. Make sure you're not added to this year's total. Drinking and driving. It's just not worth it.
Obviously his presence made more sense in the piff than on the poster, where he's just sort of there, in the corner. But the result is that you do hear the copy in his voice, which is helpful. You'd have noticed we're in black and white by now. Rationing might be a thing of the past, but coloured ink still isn't cheap. And nor was advertising space on those pages, hence being filled with prestigious booze, while the public safety announcement issued by the Department of the Environment settles with stern monochrome. It's taxpayers' money they're spending after all. By now we're up to the listings themselves, and of course in those days they used to have adverts interspersed with those too. Of a different sort, of course. Small 1-column jobs, or half-column jobs, heavy on the copy. Usually for much smaller scale things than the premium off-licence fodder promoted in full colour. And often aimed at old or ageing people, like these Synatogen vitamins. You don't see many adverts actively commanding you to stop envying these people right now. What are you, a sheep? You gonna buy this shit because some writing in a nice font, accompanied by a picture of 2 smiling old people, told you to? You really that easily manipulated? You make me sick. I mean, thank you for your custom. Sunday of week 1 gives us our first mention of the other big theme, holidays. Holidays are always all over Christmas listings magazines, of course, and indeed on the screen from Christmas Day itself. This one's simple enough. Just drive to France. That counts as a holiday. Or a means of escape, if that's what you need. Again, faintly confrontational copy. How can the most comfy way of getting to France also be the most direct one? Just look at the map. Duh. There ain't a Channel Tunnel yet, so it's this or faffing around with airports, which I for one would rather dip my balls in vinegar than do if there's any other option. Oh look, there is. Here's some liqueur chocolates that try to appropriate an aristocratic image, because we were still inherently impressed by that sort of thing back then, even at levels well below actual royalty, like a count. Although this one seems like a twat. 3 courses with a glass of wine to go with each, and he's looking forward to the Swiss chocks at the end. I know what they mean to imply. The chocks are just that good. But it just looks like a privileged arsehole being precious. Or it would, if it wasn't for the fact that you and I both automatically thought of this guy. And therefore will forgive him anything. He just wants to count down the chocks as he eats them. One individually wrapped cognac, ha ha. The rest of the listings pages are choked with holiday suggestions and tiny classified sized images from various destinations, desperately trying to tempt you along. Great Yarmouth, Cheddar Gorge, today's Isle of Man, which they're proud to tell you is more or less identical to the Isle of Man when the Vikings first invaded, as if that's a good thing. Romantic Romagna welcomes you and your money, as long as you do as you're told at all times and never say a word against Ceausescu. Seriously, don't come here, it's horrible. Yuga tours for Yugoslavia, Ibid, except with Tito instead of Ceausescu. Basically every country in Europe on both sides of the Iron Curtain, every coastal town in Britain, every holiday concentration camp operator, they all get a look in. And all much of a muchness, really. And don't forget the travel agents and tour operators. Here's Thompson to remind women readers of what's really important. Enjoying yourself is nice, but don't forget your main function is to be hot for your husband and onlookers. Eventually we're out of the listings proper and back in colour, and back with the exotic booze. Specifically, Mosaic Cyprus Sherry. This was before real sherry came only from Spain. Apparently it's made out of 1,000 Cypriot summers fortified with brandy. Not sure how that works, but obviously advertising copy wouldn't just talk a load of old bollocks, would it? You can even win 10 grand's worth of the stuff if you promise not to make assumptions about its quality based on that fact. There's just the one tobacco-related advert in this magazine, a spot for Benson and Hedges cigars, which is so straightforward there's actually very little to say about it at all, except to point out that a long, skinny cigar is in danger of being mistaken at first glance for an unusually snaking tapered turd, which probably isn't the image they're going for. Notice the complete lack of any government health warnings. That wasn't going to last much longer. Back to the booze. Have a Dubonnet. I'm only really mentioning this one because Dubonnet was reportedly the Queen's favourite. R.I.P. our grey shoes Queen. We love you, Mom. Not entirely sure what's going on in the image, though. 2 stereotypical old Frenchmen, complete with +4s and berets, flanking some kind of ironic Andy Pandy cosplayer in clogs, with copy apparently inspired by A-level French. If you're wondering how you're going to afford all this luxury alcohol, here's the Access credit card. Still a new enough concept that the advert is basically a straightforward, here's the product, here's what it's for, here's how it works job, without wordplay or trickery of any kind. And just in case you'd forgotten this was all in aid of Christmas, here's Schweppes on the inside back cover to do some carol singing. It's likeably lo-fi with these tiny bottles visibly glued to some cardboard, but it's also a clever way to showcase the company's entire range of drinks. Finally, on the back, it's usually a holiday of some sort, and this is no exception. Although it does seem to be aimed at one specific person in particular. Some intercontinental bigamist that Air Canada have uncovered, presumably due to his constant jetting from Heathrow to Montreal, and are now attempting to blackmail in some way. But it can't be for me, I don't have a Canadian family, and won't be born for 10.5 years. And that was 1972's Christmas Radio Times. Almost exclusively dedicated to drinking and holidays, with just brief spots for tobacco and chocolate and a means to pay for all of this. Even the chocks are alcoholic. At first glance, you might think the 70s were even worse for binge drinking than today. The streets must have stank of fermented vomit. There'd be corpses lying around with noses the shape and colour of waxed testicles. Everybody would be bright yellow from impending liver failure. But in fact that wasn't the case. Sure, there was a lot of booze about, but our attitude to it was healthier. It was a part of nightlife, but not an end in itself. In particular, the ultimate objective of a night out was not the loss of all motor skills and capacity for reason. Which is why the popular drinks of the time tended to be watered-down whiskey and metallic-tasting 3% standard lagers, or rich, syrupy concoctions that tasted like the stuff tinned fruit floats in. On the one hand, you'd have to drink a lot of it to get drunk, and on the other hand, you'd probably throw it back up from all the sugar before you got the chance. Oh, and they were expensive as well. Binge drinking wasn't a thing, except perhaps in 1973 during the 3-day week, and that was just to keep warm. That's due to make a comeback this festive season, of course, so while you're downing your mulled wine while wrapped in a quilt, raise a glass to the spirit of Ted Heath.
Father Christmas, give us some money. We got no time for your silly toys. Father Christmas, please hand it over. We'll beat you up, so don't make us annoyed. Father Christmas, give us some money. Don't mess around with those silly toys. Beat you up, don't hand it over. We want your bread, so don't make us annoyed. Give all the toys to the little rich boy.
You just sat through a Bob the Fish production. Nice! If you haven't already, you absolutely must check out bobthefish.org.uk. Literally hundreds more videos not unlike that one, adding up to days worth of entertainment and all absolutely free. But if you're not a cold-hearted skinflint, you can always support us on Patreon. For as little as anything at all, you can make programs like the one you just watched possible in the first place, and become eligible for bonus material such as glimpses of the book I'm writing about the BBC, monthly riffings on random commercial breaks, the complete archives of the angry political satire magazine Two Sons, and even the odd very occasional bonus video essay unavailable anywhere else. If nothing else, you should prevent me from starving and or freezing to death in the foreseeable future, so that'd be nice. No pressure or anything. bobthefish.org.uk. You make it what it is.